My question to Canadians is simple. Is Pierre Poilievre the person you want sitting across the table from Donald Trump negotiating for us?
President Trump now announcing the United States is terminating all trade discussions with Canada effective immediately.
Yeah, I wanted Pierre Poilievre sitting across the table.
Mark Carney's negotiating skills were on full display today after Donald Trump announced that he was terminating all trade talks with Canada effective immediately as a result of the Liberal government's digital services tax that was enacted last year.
Let's take a look.
The hits just keep on coming. President Trump now announcing the United States is terminating all trade discussions with Canada effective immediately. He wrote on Truth Social, quote, "We have just been informed that Canada, a very difficult country to trade with, has just announced that they are putting a digital services tax on our American technology companies, which is a direct and blatant attack on our country. Based on this egregious tax, we are hereby terminating all discussions on trade with Canada effective immediately. We will let Canada know the tariff that they will be paying to do business with the United States of America within the next 7-day period."
So why now?
Well, let's just kind of unpack this a bit. For those that may not remember, Chrystia Freeland really pushed to have a digital services tax enabled last year. Now, let's just rewind a little bit and acclimatize people to what actually happened, what the reaction was, and then we can get to why now.
I can't accept Canada permanently being in a discriminated position.
The government quietly enacted the digital services tax last week at a time when the Liberals are down in the polls and under pressure. It's making good on a 2019 campaign promise to bring in billions of dollars in new revenue.
We have such a crying need for investment in so many things in our country, whether it is housing or making life more affordable or investing in productivity and growth.
The U.S. had urged Canada not to move forward. Many of the companies impacted are based in the States. It wanted Canada to wait until countries agreed on a taxation plan together. But Canada's finance minister said that plan is delayed, and other countries, including the UK, Italy, and France, already have this tax. In a statement to CBC News, Amazon said, "We're disappointed by what it called a discriminatory tax that will harm Canadian consumers."
And why will it harm Canadian consumers? Because guess what happens whenever the government taxes a corporation?
They pass that along to the consumer base.
Right. Now, let's take a look at a news article from last year. Liberal government enacts controversial digital services tax raising trade concerns. This was July 4th, 2024, courtesy of CBC. Tax is discriminatory, says U.S. envoy.
The Liberal government's decision to impose the tax before an international agreement could be reached with other OECD countries has raised concerns about possible negative impacts. U.S. Ambassador to Canada David Cohen issued a media statement Thursday calling the tax, quote-unquote, discriminatory. Quote, "The United States Trade Representative has noted its concern with Canada's digital services tax and is assessing and is open to using all available tools that could result in meaningful progress towards addressing unilateral discriminatory digital services taxes," end quote, Cohen said in the statement. As soon as the legislation enabling the tax became law, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the American Chamber of Commerce in Canada issued a statement strongly objecting to the measure, which they say will raise prices for everyone.
Now, we're in an affordability crisis, Canada. I don't have to tell you that. You all know this. And this is what the Liberal government was doing to try to increase revenue for all of these programs to pay for them that they couldn't afford. This is why the deficit shot up so much. So this brings us all the way back to the question. If this was enacted last year, and by the way, this is not a partisan issue because if you all remember, President Joe Biden was actually present at the time the digital services tax was actually implemented, and it had this same pushback. So if it was enacted last year, why is this an issue now? Well, there's a very good reason for that. Here are some key takeaways. And the only one that you really need to worry about is the last one.
Strict compliance and filing requirements. Businesses must register, calculate DST correctly, file annual returns via API, and retain records for 8 years. First payment and return covering 2022 to 2024 are due June 30th, 2025, with significant penalties for non-compliance.
So this was a retroactive tax, meaning that companies are going to be charged this digital services tax, which is 3%, for the last 2 to 3 years, from 2022 to 2024, which means that you have to pay that lump sum of that back tax that you weren't necessarily planning on, and you have to pay that this year, the end of June.
I cannot imagine, as a company, doing all your taxes correctly, having your accountants double, triple check everything, and then some foreign government, in this case the Canadian government, comes in and says, oh, by the way, we're implementing a new tax, and by the way, it's retroactive since 2022. That's insane.
What's even more insane is that this is a Trudeau Liberal government policy. No doubt this was implemented on the advice of Mark Carney, who was advising Justin Trudeau since 2020. And Mark Carney has chosen not to repeal this tax as a result of him becoming Prime Minister. So evidently someone over at Amazon or one of these other countries reminded Donald Trump, hey, Mr. Trump, by the way, we're going to be on the hook for tens or maybe hundreds of millions of dollars that we have to pay to the Canadian government as a result of this digital services tax. And then he said, wait a minute, when are you going to have to pay that? End of the month, sir. All right, we're done. We're away from the table. We're out of here. So I want to take everybody back to something that Mark Carney said during his campaign.
My question to Canadians is simple. Is Pierre Poilievre the person you want sitting across the table from Donald Trump negotiating for us? Unlike Pierre Poilievre, I'm not a career politician, but I have managed budgets before. I have managed economies before. I have managed crises before.
Well, considering Donald Trump just got up from the table and you've been promising, oh, we're going to have a trade deal with Donald Trump in the U.S. in a couple days. Oh, well, now we're going to have a trade deal with Donald Trump in about 30 days. And now Donald Trump doesn't even want to talk to you. I go back to that question and his response to his own question. Yes, we wanted Pierre Poilievre to be sitting across the table from Donald Trump because he wasn't going to be chatting about ideology, and he wasn't going to be letting ideology drive him. He was going to be letting common sense and fiscal accountability drive him. And that's an easy conversation to have with a businessman.
Elbows up, though, right?
Yeah, elbows up. All those people behind him, are you still cheering? Because things are about to get even more expensive now. So not only are these companies now going to have to pay this digital services tax, which is going to be passed on to all of us, there's going to be another tariff coming from Donald Trump in response to that. So this is a guy who said that I've managed budgets before. Never mind the fact that he has not delivered a budget, yet he's spending $500 billion of our money. Just want to remind you of that. And number two, I've managed economies before. Well, so far, you haven't done anything for this economy. And number three, you've managed crises before. Well, you're the one who made this an entire crisis, and you sat in Parliament for about a month, and then you decided to go on vacation. Now, Donald Trump just gets up from the table during this alleged crisis that you called it. The biggest crisis of our time is what you told everybody during the election. And now you want us to believe that you're the banker, you're the negotiator, when the guy that you actually need to go negotiate with is getting it from the table because you are maintaining Trudeau-era policies. Ladies and gentlemen, yeah, I wanted Pierre Poilievre sitting across the table. This would have been done by now.